Going live now. Great. I believe we're live on YouTube, so hello, YouTube folks. Welcome to zFestival 2021, our first guest artist talk of the season. This year we have Kristina Warren kicking us off. Kristina is actually an old professor of mine from Brown. She got her PhD in composition and computer technologies from UVA. She's a composer, an improviser, and a maker. And she writes and performs pretty wild acoustic and electronic music and sounds, and creates her own instruments. There's pretty much nothing that she can't do from what I understand. And I think we're going to learn a little bit today about all the possibilities with her talk, The Aural Possible. So I'll turn it over to Kristina, and yeah, let's have a great time today.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Peter, and thank you to Peter and Shoshana and zFest for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here, zFest 2021. Thank you all for being here as well. We have Zoom participants, we have some YouTube viewers, we have a few different layers of things going on. So I'm going to try to juggle this all, and hopefully this will be an interesting learning experience for everybody. The workshop today is called The Aural Possible. So this is not going to be a straight up lecture from me. I hope it will be interactive. Those of you who are on the Zoom call, I hope you'll have the courage to speak up and try stuff, and we can have a conversation, even though there's this kind of weird layer with some people just observing on YouTube. That's cool too. If you're on the Zoom call and you want to participate, so first we're just going to have some listening and discussion, kind of get into the workshop. After that, phase 2 of the workshop will be more participatory. So I recommend you have any kind of instrument you like, or any kind of electronic setup, or, oh, is that a penny whistle or a, nice. Could just be hand clapping, simple objects, percussion, stuff from around the house. Doesn't have to be a huge deal, but I would recommend some kind of sound making thing, some way to record yourself. Could be simple phone voice memo, or, you know, whatever setup you've got, and probably headphones as well. So I'll start by saying that last week I put out a prompt to the zFestival participants. Thanks, Peter and Shoshana, so much for your admin help with all of this. The prompt was to respond in any way to the quote, "Order is what is, chaos is what could be." I'll try to put this in the chat. I don't know if this will be visible to everybody, but I'm going to at least kind of caption what I'm saying. If you're more of a visual learner or oral learner, you can get the info in different ways. Order is what is, chaos is what could be, by Wende Katwiwa. Okay. So some of you submitted short 10-second-ish bits of sound responding in any way you like to that quotation. And then what I did was to take all of those submitted recordings and mix them into a thing, which I don't consider a final product. It's meant as a jumping off point to start us on discussion. I think what I'll do, I will play out the sound that I mixed together of y'all's recordings. But I'll also link it, because over Zoom, the stereo field is lost. So if you want to hear the proper pan mix, you can listen to it on the shared drive folder for those of you who are in Zoom, and maybe we can get that link up there again, the drive folder. Before we do that, can you raise your physical or virtual hand if you sent in recordings? I just kind of want to see. Yeah, several of you. Cool. So let's go ahead and listen. And after that, I'd love to hear from you all who participated, what that process was like, what your thoughts are, and we'll talk about that mix I made as well. Okay, thanks, Peter has put the drive link that should at least be visible to the Zoom folks. I will share my audio and play out just so it goes to the YouTube stream as well, what that mix sounds like. hopefully this will work. Let me just double check my settings here. Okay. So here we go. You hear that?
Last night I had a nightmare that I had a job riding elevators. When people questioned the legitimacy of my job, I realized I was being scammed and was still unemployed.
And there it ends. Pretty short. Shall we listen to it a second time? It's under 2 minutes. I say take it in one more time. Okay, here we go.
Last night I had a nightmare that I had a job riding elevators. When people questioned the legitimacy of my job, I realized I was being scammed and was still unemployed.
All right. So we have a mix of folks who did or didn't submit audio to this. So I think I'll start with a question to you all of if you did participate, I'm curious what it's like to hear it versus what the process was like for you. But I think anybody could answer, how would you describe what you just heard? How would you characterize it?
I would say it sounds sort of like a fast-moving dream, things coming and going, similar to the experience of waking up and seeing it's 5:30 and closing my eyes and looking again and it's 7:30.
sort of timey-wimey what happened, a little bit disorienting. Interesting.
A couple things came up in the chat. Alexa says surprisingly cohesive. Shema says pointillistic, but in a linear way. And Amanda says dystopic. So quite the wide range of emotions coming from it.
In giving you that quotation to be inspired by order is what is, chaos is what could be, I think you can pull out from there, of course, order might, put us onto more straightforward or kind of musically perceptible or recognizable sounds, whereas chaos might lend itself to speed, rapid changes as well, noisier. I got a lot of kind of multiphonics and extended techniques sorts of submissions, so I could hear both of these poles in the audio that came in. Maybe it will be interesting if I share a little bit of how I made the mix and what jumped out to me. I don't consider this a final answer. This is just, I'm bringing my very personalized ears to it and what jumped out at me. Others may hear different things. Like if you were faced with this sound bank, that you might hear different resonances and pulls among all these things. But I'll just share this. So what I was saying earlier, just to be clear, I think the pan variety does not really come across, but pan is something I use quite a lot to clarify a mix. So for instance, the very first sound you hear, sorry, I just want to make sure I do the share properly here. You can hear it kind of starts center, spikes left a bit, and then zooms off to the right. So I often use, and you're going to use this later in today's session, this is why I'm going over this, often we'll use stereo field variety to clarify a mix rather than just making something louder. I'll put it in a special place so that I can hear it. So that first sound without pan is like so.
Last night I had.
Oh, I think it might have just taken that. Okay, I see it took the whole thing. That's all right. But then anyway, reintroducing the pan.
Job writing.
Oops. So already this is a bit of an interpretation I made. I don't know if the person who contributed this sound is here. You're welcome to chime in if you had a kind of different view of what this might be, but I thought it would be a great sort of hard cut, almost zooming into this piece, kind of bam, we're here sort of thing.
Yeah, that is actually one of the sounds that I made. And the way that you're using it, it sort of feels like the like THX beginning of a movie thing.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. It does feel like a sort of intro clip in this context. Okay, so additionally, I used, I didn't want to really process the sounds too much. I didn't try to clean them up if there was ambient noise or anything like that. Although I did, just again for kind of mix clarification and also a little bit of added color, so to speak, I did use some filtering. So in this one, this person is describing their dream. So maybe that sort of lends itself to the dream quality that some of you were getting. And at each sentence, I cut down the low pass filter. So you heard kind of less and less spectrally. So let's hear that. I also skipped the pan over. So you can see kind of with each sentence, it goes a little bit left and then, or excuse me, the high cut, low pass, high cut. So let's hear this only.
Last night I had a nightmare that I had a job writing elevators. When people questioned the legitimacy of my job, I realized I was being scammed and was still unemployed.
So my thought there was that if it gets a little more muffled, it might kind of blend into the things that follow. Is that contributor here? No, maybe they're in the ether, electronic ether somewhere. And then I wanted to say also, this was the first sort of point of resonance I noticed. And I think, let me just remind myself of what this one sounds like. Yeah. So there's some whistling, there's some high clarinet stuff in here, and I just noticed that there was some similarity in how they sounded, and I wanted to blur things or make it a little confusing what was what. So let me just solo these few things and you can kind of hear what I'm talking about. See, again, there's a pan swoop here. Oh, dog barking. I just lowered that to kind of keep everything on the level a little more. This was sort of a late addition, but I thought that was really beautiful coming after. I think I couldn't tell how it was cut in the recording. It's like maybe a high clarinet note. I wasn't sure what's, or percussion. It's kind of fun when I'm not even sure what it is, but I just kind of go for sonic similarity. Do you have other observations about this mix that was put together? Or for those of you who submitted recordings, the process of doing that? Had you done something like that before?
What's the name of the program you're using? I've not seen this before.
Oh, that's called Logic, which is a DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, which is a class of software that there are many of. I use Logic a lot, and my other main one that I use is Ableton Live. I really like Logic for stuff where I'm starting with kind of a pile of different sounds and I want to make some kind of soundscape out of it. Ableton to me is a little bit more beat oriented or doing kind of particular things with arrangement. But that's my go-to personally, Logic for really cases like this where I'm starting with a pretty diverse mix of things and I want to try to sculpt it into something sensible in some way.
I was enjoying hearing your process just because since I imagine most of us didn't hear all the sounds by themselves, hearing like them separately and how you decided to combine them was really interesting. Because when you hear it in a mix, it's hard to be like, oh, that's what that is, and that's what that is. So, and then just like how you heard them together, like I would be interested to see if we all did the same thing, like if what we would have connected and stuff like that.
Well, we are going to have an opportunity to do something like that in a few moments. That reminds me, I wanted to say one more thing about the mix and my thought process. When I got into the kind of drum part, the drums to me really stood out when I was listening to the whole bank of sounds. This was from, I think, like a digital drum kit, probably in a DAW or something similar. And so that was this sound. So already you can see I have a low pass on there. I don't know if you can see that. Did a pretty long fade out. But I started to think about density and polyphony. I was thinking about the chaos part of that quotation. Let me give you a little bit of larger context. One day, Katuiwa is an organizer and activist, and so kind of been involved in like Black Lives Matter and different things. And so she is talking about kind of culture at large and her activism work when she was talking about order and chaos. But she's really thinking about chaos in, I would say, like an astrological kind of way, thinking about, she says, things moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and yet there's a method to the madness, so to speak. So I started thinking about, how can I make things feel more 1,000,000 miles an hour in here? How can I ratchet up the density and still have some clarity coming through? So I think I had this one elsewhere originally, but adding it here, I don't always recommend this, but sometimes adding another layer can clarify. Often removing a layer clarifies, but you kind of just have to me, this kind of worked with the chaos thing. So I'll just play this passage through here, I guess. So again, this kind of quiet entrance on the right for this just added some texture and some atmosphere, I would say. So I guess my interpretation of chaos personally, not everything has to be at a triple forte volume all the time. There might be a lot of things going on, but this one is kind of a mezzo piano over here, and then it fades in, and different layers and levels of things. We're kind of going over this mixed stuff quick. I could tell you more about that, but I'm eager to get to a little more an active or interactive portion of this workshop. So if everybody has their sound making implement and recording implement, I propose that we go into phase 2 of this workshop, where we're basically going to do this process again. If you didn't have an opportunity to submit something to that quote, no worries. We're going to do the whole process again now. So I'm going to throw out verbally, and I'll put in the chat some prompts for you. They start a little more guided and then get more open. I appreciate those of you who have your cameras on, because it'll help me sort of read the room and know if I need to adjust the pacing. But my thought is I'll say a prompt and give you a couple minutes to ponder and record some stuff in response to it, and then I'll put a new one. Right, so you can respond freely, however you like, to each prompt. I'll read each prompt aloud and put it in the chat, and leave a few minutes after for you to consider and respond. If any prompt doesn't work for you, feel free to scrap it. If you want to spend our whole time here working on just one prompt, that's totally fine. I recommend using headphones. And then afterwards, we'll go into little breakout rooms, and y'all will do that production process like I did. Like, you'll mix your recorded bits together and see what comes of that. So I'll just give you a little more info on what I'm envisioning. This session, again, is called the Aural Possible. So it's deeply inspired by Pauline Oliveros, as well as many others. In the intro to her Sonic Meditations score, Pauline says, each sonic meditation is a special procedure for the following. 1, actually making sounds. 2, actively imagining sounds. 3, listening to present sounds. 4, remembering sounds. So all of those things I think will come up in these prompts in different ways: making sounds, imagining, listening, and remembering sounds. So I hope you'll embrace this idea of the Aural Possible. I'll just throw out there that I've done seeds of this kind of work in different teaching contexts before, but I've never done a full-on workshop like this, so it's an experiment for me too. So we'll figure it out. And you're welcome to use that shared Google Drive folder or whatever online methods once we're done to share your recorded sounds with each other. If you're on the Zoom or the YouTube channel, you can play along at home. You just won't be in a breakout room on the Zoom later. So Let's start with a warm-up, since we've talked about this one, and it might be fun to have another go at it, or a first go if you haven't yet. Please respond to this quotation. Order is what is, chaos is what could be. Wende Katwiwa. Okay, I'm gonna act like that's enough time for that. Just to be fair, I'm playing along and attempting to do these prompts as well with my little Korg Volca bass synth. Prompt number 2. Listen to your current surroundings. Observe the sounds happening, some of which may be outside your physical perception. Once you've gotten a sense of that, mentally imagine a sound that reinforces your sonic surroundings. And that might be plenty. Maybe actually make the sound you've imagined, now physically reinforcing your surroundings. Inspired by Paulina Oliveros. Let's go on to prompt number 3. Remember a sound you've heard a lot lately. Could be traffic, microwave, birds, someone's voice, etc. Recreate this sound. Inspired by Paulina Oliveros. Right, let's go on to the next prompt. A contact microphone, such as a piezo element, lays on a surface and amplifies the sounds, especially the small and subtle ones that play across it. And if you're not familiar, I'll drop a YouTube link with a little demo on a contact mic. If you happen to have a contact mic, you might use it here. Otherwise, make sound that somehow plays across a surface with its own unique scales of time and space. Okay, now make a sound that goes or comes from under the surface, inspired by Evelyn Glennie. Next prompt, should you choose to accept it, is the distance between a noise and a memory. And for our last prompt, before we break out and attempt to mix these, free music. Make any sound that's intuitive or that you're craving to make. Free refers to freedom, not price. Inspired by AGF. Hard to tell, but it looks like people are kind of working away. So let's take maybe 2 more minutes to work on what you're currently doing, and then we'll break into breakout rooms. All right, Shoshana or Peter, are you able to put folks into breakout rooms now? So we'll take about 10 or 15 minutes. I think I'd like to be back here by 1:45, 1:50 Eastern. So again, this may be more of a process-based thing. I know we're kind of rushing for time here at this point, but I'm very curious to hear how you all approach it. I think each group may potentially take very different approaches. Okay, we have several folks who are uploading their sounds. Right.
Yeah, and I'm just sorting out the breakout rooms. It'll be 1 second.
Oh my gosh, there's so many sounds in here. This is great. I just want you guys to know that the app I was using to record has these little, like, it'll like turn orange sometimes, and I was like, why is it doing that? And that's when it decides that it's music. So it can like, it'll like tell me, it'll be like, now it's music. And I thought that was
Have the voice of society right in your ear like that.
Are we uploading them just to the general pre-recorded sounds file?
Well, I'm seeing it looks like
I made another
zFest.
folder.
Yeah, 7.5 workshop sounds.
7.5.
Just wherever, you know,
Yeah,
is convenient that you can. My vision is that you can figure it out, do what you want, but my thought was that one person in each breakout room could be running the DAW session to mix everything, and others could provide their input, but y'all can figure out how you want to do it.
Great, the breakouts look ready. It looks like we're gonna have 2 groups of 3 and a group of 4. And Kristina and Shoshana, I'm assigning you to room 9, but you should be able to move rooms if you want to. So it's gonna be 1, 2, and 3 where the participants are, unless you want to go directly into it.
1, 2, 3, 9.
Yeah, I just put you in 9 because it's easier. Okay, I'm gonna open the rooms.
Hey, Rick. Can you pause the live stream?
Yeah, I think I'll probably just make a quick announcement to the YouTube folks. So we're going into breakout rooms now. I'm not sure if there will be a little bit of a discussion afterwards.
Yeah, I'm hoping there will be.
Okay.
Probably about 10 till.
10 till, okay. So yeah, we're just gonna go dark on YouTube for a little bit, but we'll be back for the discussion.
And then
My Zoom is still saying it's live. Is that what you're seeing? Live on custom streaming service?
yeah, you're muted.
It's gonna say that, but the stream, I believe, is showing a still image of me, or maybe it's not.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just gonna